Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everyone, my name is Minh and I'm your host today from NDIS Property Australia. Here in Sydney, not Brisbane, we're down here for the Sydney Disability Expo. And today you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Today's strange topic is about spaciousness.
Yeah.
Is there such a word?
We can make it a word.
Okay. And we have a repeat guest speaker called Tina Kordrostami.
Oh, wow. That was perfect.
From MHA DESIGN.
Correct.
Here in Ryde, New South Wales, Sydney. So, Tina, welcome.
Thank you. So nice seeing you again, Minh.
I feel like I'm stalking you here.
I wasn't going to say anything, but
okay, no worries. So, should we talk actual space or abstract space?
Let's start with our practical understanding of what space is.
So, Tina, why is space so important in a design of a house? That's number one, particularly SDA design housing.
So, what actually makes a building practical, efficient, and, it actually places a positive impact on anyone entering it is the spaces involved. So it's got nothing to do with the structural elements. It's got nothing to do with what it looks like on the outside. Those elements are, very minor when it comes to understanding why a building works. The spaces themselves, they bring value. And so as a designer, when you sit down on a new project, the first thing you want to understand is who your client is. Mm-hmm. Once you understand who they are, what their needs are, what their likes and dislikes are, you can then start understanding the spaces they require. So once we understand what spaces are involved, we can then start creating a skeletal structure around those spaces. So it's always good to design and build from inside out rather than outside in. Mm-hmm. This at times is forgotten because, of course, we have various regulations to abide by, and they create a sort of a boundary for us to design within. But I think that it's important to make sure, whilst we're paying attention to regulations, we're also not forgetting just how important the internal space of a building is. So to better understand spaces, we've got obviously our habitable spaces like our bedrooms. We've got our wet areas such as our en-suites and our kitchens. We've got our communal areas such as our living spaces. We've got internal and external communal spaces, courtyards, atriums, patios. So all these spaces can also be understood differently by every single individual. Everyone has a different understanding of these spaces. Once again, this is why it's very important for a designer to get to know a client before they actually commence a project. So
is it not hard to not being able to be aware who the client is to begin with? Because we're talking about potential a wide variety of different participants here in a improvably or robust housing. Yeah. So you talk about knowing the client, meeting the client. Well, there is no client yet. So how the challenge is trying to design for someone who you don't know who's going to end up being in the dwelling. Yeah.
Well, that's where adaptable design comes into play. It's great to design something that offers you various options that you can later build on. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Most of the time we have no idea who the client is. So let's stick to our regulations and make sure the basic necessities are provided and complying. But let's also leave space for growth. How can we do this? Either structurally, we could allow for various elements to be moved. If not structurally, because it can be a little bit expensive, we can make sure that the materials we're using, can make sure that the surfaces, the lighting, everything has various options attached to them. So it could be as simple as putting in a dial within your lighting. Little elements like that allow for a future client or participant to come into a space and specify it exactly for their use. We don't live in an ideal world, but what I think in the future, a lot of accessible homes, they do need to pay attention to a participant's BSP before they are designed. And if not, we need to at least stick to a certain boundary when it comes to the diagnosis of the potential participants residing within a house.
So speaking of an ideal world, if there were no limitations or build covenants and the block was a large block and money wasn't a problem, what is an ideal spacious SDA home to you as a designer?
Well, number one, I would love to sit down with the participant. I would love to understand what capacities they would like to build on, what their goals are, how they define their own disability. Once I have that holistic understanding of them as an individual, I can then sit down and create a space that's specifically designed for them. If I don't have access to the participant, I would like to sit down and create a adaptable design which features elements that are able to move, such as partition walls. We're talking lattices within the ceiling so that you can have various elements on offer for potential, adaptation of spaces. I would like to design from inside out. So we're talking, a layout or a plan that isn't very, to the social norm. So we're no longer looking at how to squeeze in as many spaces into a limited boundary available. We're now talking about how to really allow ourselves to be creative within our spaces intended. And then based on those spaces, we start creating an external facade for the building itself. A lot of the times, we also want to just quickly fit in the spaces that aren't as important to us, such as the staff room or office space. But truth is, there is no such thing as a hierarchy in space. Every space within a building is important. So in an ideal world, I would have the freedom of expressing each space within its own importance and placing value for those spaces also. For example, within a staff room, I would like for them to not have their office in there as well. Staff, especially our staff working in the disability sector, they have a very difficult job. Their mental health is also very important, especially to providers, especially since their consistent relationship with the participants will make a very long-lasting effect on them and their growth. I've seen this a lot before. Whenever a participant lost a certain staff member, the transition process of finding a new staff member just completely impacted them negatively. So we want to make sure our staff are looked after properly so that they can provide their support consistently. So within a staff room, I would want it to be comfortable. I would want them to feel safe. I would want them to be able to retreat within that space, just sometimes for a breather. And then once you do take that office outside of their room, you're also creating a more approachable office space for the participants as well. It's no longer a complete shutout. This zone is not accessible by you, and this is specifically intended for the use of staff. It's now, hey, this space is, better used for reports and, us having to process our admin work. It's not such a, what's the word? It's no longer a space that, makes the participant think that they're living in an institution. It's just another room intended for the use of admin work. So yeah, really in an ideal world, I would really bring value to every single space. I would prioritize the layout of those spaces rather than the facade of the building and the overall shape of the building. And of course, I would love to get to know the participants individually before I even begin the design itself.
So I have a question. You talk about staff room, office. Is this separate to a OLA bedroom? Is that correct?
So
Because out there in the marketplace, we often see 4-bed, 4-bar, 2-car design, and the master ensuite is the OLA room. So in your world, are you saying there's an extra office on top of that?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. I've never seen it work. I've never seen it work where the staff have their room and the office space is also within their room and they're able to have a healthy relationship with the participants. The office space is always, as a participant, when you put yourself into their shoes, when they look at an office space, they think, this is the space where they go sit down and write about me. This is the space where I don't have a say. And it's almost that I'm an institution and I'm being analysed. So if you bring that negative space into the staff bedroom, they're going to relate that to the staff directly.
Yeah.
So it's so good to separate it. That's one reason. The second reason, the staff need their own space of comfort and peace and safety and just for them to also feel at home. Because for a lot of them doing those really long hours, if they don't have that, it affects their sanity. There is another, so in psychology, we have 3 different types of spaces. We've got our lived space, our perceived space, and our conceived space. So lived space or abstract space, that's more so talking about your environment. So it also talks about how the environment around you depicts what your space should be. What we see in today's society is a lot of people telling the participants, this is what your home should look like. What we need to work on changing it into is, what do you want your home to be? Within our perceived or social space, that's more so the outside world. So the perception of the outside world. That's what the question that would come from that space is, here is a list of goals intended for your growth. What we should work on changing that space into is, what capacity would you like to build on? And last but not least, the conceived symbolic space. So that's the conceptual, the political space. They like to say, here is a list of support provided. And what I think we need is, how can we adapt the environment to allow for your interests? So it's really about bringing the questions back to the participants and prioritizing them and their perception of the space, and us having to understand that no matter what, we're always going to live in a society which has these 3 spaces. We're always going to have politics. We're always going to have external perceptions that don't really understand disability, however, have a lot to say about it. And we're always going to have a third space, which is created by more of a social understanding rather than a abstract one, which is talking about, based on what I understand of your disability to be, this should be what you should access. We can't ever change that, but we can modify it, we can improve on it. And the easiest way to, start that is by bringing the question back to the participant themselves and allowing them to answer it, so that they can shape these spaces into what they need it to be. Within a home, you can definitely apply these questions. So starting from abstract space, what do you perceive a home to be? This is really understanding those internal spaces, the courtyard, the bedrooms, the kitchen, the living rooms. What do these participants think of these spaces? And what elements of those spaces remind them of a home? Within a social setting, what capacity would you like to build on? So in this home, what changes can we make to these spaces so that it could help you with your capacity? So what we've seen, in other countries is setting up the layout of the home itself so that it follows a natural path. From bedroom, you wake up, you go to the kitchen, you have breakfast, you go into the living room to rest. Having a layout that follows that natural path helps with capacity building. Last but not least, symbolic space. How can we adapt the environment to allow for your interests? That's talking about making sure the home or the land you buy and the area you want to develop your home in, making sure the environment within it supports the participant themselves so that they can access the community, because our end goal is always for their integration back into the community.
In our discussions that we have with other providers, they always say, look, the reality of having 3 participants in a care in the house is lower. The chances of that happening is lower. So there's a trend towards 2 participant homes, dwellings out there across the country. The trend is happening right now as we speak. So carer plus 2, whether it is, HPS, FA, IL or whatnot, robust. So the 3-bedroom design house is the way forward. A lot of the providers we deal with in Queensland, they say, look, unless there's a second living area, you're not going to have that 3rd participant, because having 3 participants in a house with only 1 living space is just too small. Now, in theory, if you can build a gigantic mansion and have 4 bedrooms and have 4 tenants, okay, because the space is there. So when we talk to our clients, and our clients are all smart, they look at designs. Locations are fine, but designs are very important, and providers look at it as well. The location of the OOA room, how many bathrooms or toilets there are, how many living spaces are there going to be, are there any courtyards, is there storage space in the house? And it's the lack of storage space in all builds at the moment out there, because it costs more. It costs more to build a bigger house. We all know that.
Yeah.
So everyone's trying to cut down the price where they can, but we should always think about the end user in mind, because if you're going to cut corners and have lack of a second living space, lack of storage space, the participants are not going to live in it. They'll move on to another bigger house.
Yeah.
So this is why the reason why we're having this podcast topic today of space is because it is an important topic to be aware of, because no one talks about it, no one discusses it, and we're making it an issue today in today's podcast to say space is important. There's internal and external space, and sometimes you're buying a small lot block of land, and it's zero. Was it zero lot boundary? What's the word?
The setbacks?
Yeah, the setbacks on the side. There's just 0 setbacks.
Maximum.
Because the blocks are too small, right? So, and we all seen those lots where they're just so 10-metre wide frontages, and then one side is against the fence, another side is just a metre wide there on the side of there. So, it's the lot size and dimensions does affect the design that goes onto it.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that impacts upon the design, which impacts upon their lifestyle in that house.
Exactly.
So as an investor, you've got to be aware of how important space is. How would you want to be as a tenant, a normal tenant living in a small house with 4 people? It just doesn't, it's too hard, and it's hard for us, and it'll be hard for them as well.
Just because you can fit in that extra bedroom doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. And we always tell our investors, look, treat that 4th room as a media room.
Yeah.
So then you have your OOA room, 2 participants bedroom, with the living room and a media room.
Or even a sensory room, a place for them to go inside and relax and have a therapeutic space.
Can you explain to our listeners what a sensory room means?
Definitely. So sensory room or breakout room, we see these in more so robust homes. So it's for our participants that are struggling with certain intellectual disabilities, but it can also be occupied by neurotypical participants within HPS. It's basically a space which pays attention to your triggers and your sensitivities to different senses, such as lighting, such as thermal comfort, such as acoustics and sound. It's a space for you to retreat to whenever you are, feeling a need to get away from where you are at the moment. A space for you to be present and, almost meditate in and relax in and feel comforted.
I had a meeting once with a provider in Brisbane, and he said there was a house they have which had a sensory room, and all the participant wanted to do was just sit there and play bubble wrap by himself. That's all he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that was his little moment.
Yeah.
So, space is important, and also what goes into the space under the roof is also important. So something new today is you talk about the office, which is an extra part of the house, which is above and beyond the OA bedroom. I think an actual powder room is also important. You very rarely see powder rooms because 3 bed, 3 bath, and there's no spare toilet for the visitors. So again, think with the right space and the right design and the right purpose in mind, as you say, from a practical point of view is very important. But then also externally you see so many small alfrescos and that's it. You think, well, all this land in the backyard and there's that tiny little...
Landscaping is so important.
That's right.
So important. We have these sensory spaces outside as well. They're not limited to internal spaces only. You can gain so much from just sitting outside time to time.
Yeah. So I'm sure at one point in the future we'll have a sensory topic, right?
Would love to.
But for now, I want to bring up this topic of the yard, right? So we talk about future-proofing and giving them forever home, but people don't realise that doing some small things like a backyard with trees and flowers and a little fish pond, a sensory garden, it may mean nothing to you and I, but to them it means everything.
Yeah.
So, you're spending all this money on an SDA dwelling somewhere in Australia. Think about those little things there.
Yeah, the experience. So a lot of HBS participants they've been living in hospital for years. So for them to go back into the community can be a shock. Their living space outside could be a good transition back into the community as well, because it's a place where they can go interact with the other residents, with the staff. They can invite people over themselves. And that helps them transition back into the community. But also, they're starting to relearn how to have a home once more. A home has a living space outside as well. It's got an outdoor space. It's got a little garden. It's got a barbecue area. We need to make sure that these buildings are as much of a home as any other home out there.
Yeah.
We want to move away from institutions, from hospital homes, and we want to provide every participant with a chance of living within a complete home. And that includes a yard,
So Tina, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Close your eyes.
Oh, they're closed.
Now, imagine you're sitting on the alfresco table and chair, right? And don't open your eyes, but imagine you open your eyes up in your imagination here, and you see in front of you a nice garden with flowers and palm tree and roses, a little fish pond in the corner, a Balinese hut in the other corner with a little pool on the side there, and the nice green lawn there. And you as a participant wake up every day, you come out and you have your tea and you're with your carer, support worker, and this is your life. And and this is every person who lives in a house as a normal human being would love to wake up to every day themselves. So if that is what you as a normal tenant in a house would deserve, why shouldn't a participant also deserve the same thing? Okay, so therefore, if you are a listener and you're an investor and you're going to invest in SDA, provide the life that you think that you deserve to your participant who's living in your house as well, because they deserve it as well.
Absolutely.
So when people say, "Oh, what should I have in the house, and how should it be designed? Will it work or not?" Well, just think of it as if you're living in it.
Put yourself in their shoes.
In their shoes.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't want to wake up and go out to a bare yellow lawn, empty yard with nothing there, and there's zero setback. There's nothing to do in the backyard. It's just boring. You want to give the participants who are living in this home a forever home, who are not going to want to move on, because the moment you have turnover, attrition of tenancies, participants who are tenants, you're going to lose money and you're going to cause not harm but cause stress, anxiety about they want to move on, they want to leave, they want to find a better place.
Absolutely right, and they will.
They will.
They definitely will.
They have the right to terminate their lease within 90 days notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people talk about a forever home, they'll live the next forever. Well, they can leave in 90 days. And, it could be a simple reason why. It could be a dog barking next door.
Yeah.
These triggers will cause them to say, I don't want to live here anymore. I'm out. So,
just like any one of us, It's happened a lot. I've moved to an apartment and found out my neighbour has a snake as a pet.
So external space is an important part of this topic here. So we talked about internal, external, and maximising space. So another idea could be, using and I saw it the other day yesterday with your house there we looked at in Gardenia. The garage was used as storage of the wheelchairs and the fridges and all the stuff in there and the scooter. Woo! So again, space, utilizing space and maximizing it to its to its potential. One of our builders we worked with in Melbourne, they've used the garage as another breakout room by tiling the garage.
Interesting.
So that's a second breakout room. So a breakout room in the house and a breakout room in the garage.
Like a workshop breakout.
Yeah, so it's tiled garage. So they park the car in the driveway, and that's another space there. So again, utilising space from a necessities point of view, you do something different, you design something differently, and that makes it different, I guess, yeah.
I mean, even another way I've been utilising space, I've been creating rooms that are self-sufficient. So they have a little kitchenette, a little living corner as well. So yeah, you might have bigger bedrooms, but because there's so much available for every participant within those bedrooms, you're actually allowing them to have more personal space to them for them. So
we did a podcast about 10 episodes ago with Sedana Constructions in Perth. It was about improvability, and we were talking about a 350 square metre block with a 280 square metre floor plan, right? It was maximised to the extent whereby the IL bedrooms were double the size of normal bedroom, with a media room in every bedroom.
Wow.
With a courtyard to the ensuite. 4 of them.
That's great. That's amazing.
Right? So when I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, this is maximised space, customised, bespoke design. And I knew for a fact that, this would attract a full tenancy of IL participants immediately compared to all the other IL homes out there, because they want their own space. They want their own courtyard to do their own thing. They want their own media room in their own bedroom. It was double the size of a normal bedroom, double. It was massive. And no kitchenette as well. Kitchenette, media room. So living space, kitchenette, bedroom, ensuite, courtyard times 4. It was gorgeous. And we're doing 2 of those right now, side by side.
That's so great. It's pretty much little studios. Then.
Yeah.
No longer bedroom.
Yeah. And the great thing with that is, even if from a resale point of view in the future, it could be sold as they call it rooming combination over in Perth, like co-living kind of design.
Yeah.
So shared space. Yeah. So it could be 3 IL participants and a carer, or 4 normal professionals living in a house, right? Or a family. It was redesigned it was a massive alfresco as well, right? So that was called spacing, utilising the council regulations to allow them to design it that way. Yeah.
We're really redefining the way we approach spaces and homes, not just, for neurodivergence, but just everyone in our society today. We're really evolving our perception, which is great. It's great that we're becoming more open-minded to what a home should be and, our understanding of what's temporary and permanent. So we're definitely headed in the right direction. We just got to understand that sometimes it's not about how much you can fit into a space, and it's more about the quality of the spaces themselves.
So any final words of advice to our listeners about the concept of space in an SDA house?
Final words of advice. I would say, like you said, Minh, put yourself in the shoes of the future resident and walk through that space yourself before you start limiting each program to a specific size. I think that's how spaces should be designed.
If it's not good for you, why should it be good for anyone else?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
There's the farewell song.
Godfather.
So we're currently in Tina's office, and all the other staff outside are busy doing the thing, and that's the reason why the background music.
It's also Friday, so they're getting ready.
Yes. So myself and Grace, we're going off to the Sydney Disability Expo tomorrow, and just seeing who's doing what in the area, in the community. But one final word. Yesterday we had a client here, Gregory, right, who had 2 blocks of land up in the Blue Mountains, and he came to us, and we've referred him to you to look at doing design and potentially build on these 2 blocks. And again, this is back to space. He's thinking SDA dwellings. We looked at the market data, SDA data, demand and supply, or demand more so. And my advice to him in front of you, Tina, was, well, SDA is nice, but think of the fallback position. What if that doesn't work? How can we maximize your investment in these dwellings so that you're happy with the outcome? Because the worst thing you can do is build 2 SDAs and they're empty, right? So I said to him, and I said to you, look, think about STA, MTA as a product, which doesn't need to be SDA compliance at all, or designing it so there's separate dual key living areas where 2 different tenants and the carers can be different sides of that. Not necessarily a dual lock it's a dual key home, not a dual OC or a duplex, right? A special design there. And on these larger blocks up in Blue Mountain, it's the outdoors. They'll spend more time as well outdoors.
Lifestyle.
Yeah, lifestyle. So when we talk about space internal, space external, will be in the forefront of the architect or designer's minds, and you as an investor should just look at it and just add using common sense as well. So that goes back to budget, 1, 2, the environment, and 3, why are you doing this project?
Intention is everything.
Yeah. So all those answers determine how or what kind of space is being delivered at the end of the day. Yeah. So it is a complex topic, and I thought we'd just talk about this very briefly. I'm sure we'll have another session another time in the future.
We'd love to. We love having you in Sydney, Minh.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much, folks, and we'll see you later.
Thanks, everyone.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.